Hi, my name is Scott Langford. I am the pastor here at the United Pentecostal Church in Fox. And the little history about the church, this is not the original spot of the church. The church started in 1982 by John and Pearl Elliott. Started the church there in the old schoolhouse at Turkey Creek. And eventually they outgrew that, and then they moved the church up to here. There was an old rock house about over in the very front, and they very quickly outgrew that. And in 1985 they built this church, and I just found out some more history about this I did not know, but this was a very community involved project. A lot of the material came from this area, and a lot of the people in this community made this possible. By the blessings of the Lord and the blessings of this community, the church that is sitting here behind me I feel, has been a great blessing to our community. 3 years ago, we decided, because of the size of our youth group, that we needed more Sunday school classroom. We added on 105 feet to the back of the church. We ended up with 7 classrooms, 2 brand new nice sized bathrooms, an entrance hallway, and it's just turned out to be a very, very beautiful project, and I feel the Lord has blessed us richly over all of this. I've always believed that where the focal point of a community is the strength of that, and it's just amazing how that we've got so many churches here in our area, and with the churches binding together and coming together, we show strength.
This is Parma Full Gospel Church, built here in Parma, 1976. We started in a brush arbor out here, built a church the same year, and my dad was the pastor here, still is. He had health reasons, the reason he's not here talking, and I am. A few years back we built onto the church, but the number hadn't increased a whole lot, but we're glad to have a church here in this community. I think it's maybe the backbone of a community is a church, and not just the building, but the people who go there and represent the church. I thought, as a young boy going to church here, raised up in church, I've learned a lot of things about the Word of God and what it does in a person's life. I had a brother, and we was raised up here in the church, and it's been our life. It's been our life, and I thought the church is a place where people come and they get help from God and the Spirit of God to direct them in the paths they need to go in this life. The people come here. We're just a small part, but I hope the people that come here will serve that purpose in this community. I thought we've had a lot of missionaries and pastors and preachers come by here, and the church has supported them and to go into other parts of the country to go to spread the gospel into the whole world. And I hope that's what we're doing here. I believe we are. And if God will keep helping us and we'll keep talking to Him, He'll help us to do the right thing while we're here at Parma until we walk out of this life.
I just want to tell a little history of the Bethlehem General Baptist Church. To my knowledge, it was formed and organized in 1905. They had several brush arbors and things like that until they built the building. First building that was built here was built in 1927, and it burned in 1934. And then they continued having the brush arbors and what have you here at this church, and some of them was in the old schoolhouse up next door. There's been several preachers here at this church. Brose Harold, Dean May, Brother Bobby Ward is the pastor here at the present. In 2005, we had the centennial celebration here at the church, and had a memorial built down in the corner on the cornerstone where the old building used to be, and had a pretty good celebration here. There's lots of folks that's in attendance here, all the common names of this community, the Bonds, Branscombs, Broyles, Hinesleys, Hollands. That's where I'm kind of connected through, is through the Hollands. My grandmother was daughter of Neil Holland, which was very instrumental in this church. And they've had a lot of good singers here, and had a lot of singing schools that lasted like 1 and 2 weeks at a time. Joe Tyser and Orville Johnson was one that kind of prodded me on to come on and get into the church here. Glenn and Pete Morrison done the job for the stained windows for our church in memory of Mrs. Laura Morrison. In 2005, when we had our dedication memorial for the centennial celebration, Susan Cast constructed this. It kind of shows the heritage and the connection to all the people and members of the church. R.N. Neil Holland, my great-great-grandfather. He was very instrumental in the organization of this Bethlehem church.
I'm Doug Stewart, one of the founding members of Skyland Baptist Church. In June of 1991, a group of people contacted me about starting a Southern Baptist work, since there was not one in the Fox area. After several weeks of planning and prayer meetings, we decided that we did want to start a work, so the Arkansas Baptist State Convention brought us in a portable chapel, which is back towards Fox about 2.5 miles, and we were there until June the 29th, 1994, and in the meantime we found out that the Catholic Church was for sale, which had been built, I understand, sometime in the 1960s, and we purchased the building. And then on June the 29th, we had our first service here in the new building, and then we added the fellowship hall and things like that later. To the corporate program, which is all Southern Baptist churches nationwide pooling their money together, and then our missionaries, when they go on the field, they go for as long as they feel like they want to stay. They don't have to come back every year and raise funds to go back to wherever they're at. And that's one thing that led me into the Southern Baptist Convention, was the support of missions through the corporate program. I pastored this church for 14 years, a little over 14 years, and then I retired as pastor. Alan Rowland is our current pastor.
I'm Travis Linville, and this is my dad, Robert Linville. The Church of Christ at Fox was built in about 1954, and
finished in 54.
Finished in 54. Who all helped on the building, as far as you can remember?
Woodrow Stewart, our retreat, and Jim and Lindsay. Lindsay was the main carpenter. He did most of the work.
And that was Jim and Lindsay Linville. And Lindsay Linville was your father, right?
Right.
And when the church was building was completed, Lindsay Linville was the minister for the first 25 years or so.
Yeah.
And tell them a little about his memory.
You could mention a passage in the Bible and he can tell you the chapter and verse of where it was.
And one of the reasons why he had such a memory is he was albino, which if you don't know what albino is, he had real light skin and his eyes were pink, and Jim was the same way, and they had a sister and she was the same way, and albinos, their vision is not very good, and Grandpa, by the time of his death, he was almost practically blind, but he studied the Bible one word at a time, and that's one reason that his memory was so good.
He had two brothers, both of them was black-headed.
Two other brothers that were black-headed, and the pigment of their skin was the way it should be. But and Lindsay, he preached until he was his last sermon was when he was about 86 years old, and he lived to be 89. And in the before the church building was built, well, church we held church in some of the houses. Lemoyne Linville, which is my dad's brother, church was held there at his house.
Uncle John Morrison.
Uncle John Morrison, they held church in his house. In the beginning, when the church was first built, and Irvin Treat was the song leader. When we would have periods of times that we didn't have a full-time preacher, we used the students from Harding University. And at the present time, that's what we're using that comes here and preaches each Sunday. So we've had preachers from all over the United States here just because of using those from Harding. I got married here, and it lasted, in August, it's lasted 40 years. Not a bad place to get married.
Yep. My name is Sharon Callahan. I'm currently pastoring the church here at Turkey Creek, and you sort of wanted a story of the history of the church. Well, the people at Turkey Creek were worshiping down at the old schoolhouse, and as the congregation grew and God was blessing, they envisioned building another building, and so they consulted Brother John A. Callahan, and he deeded us enough land to start the church here at Turkey Creek, and we started working on it, and it was a faith project for Mother. There never was a lot of money in the treasury or anything. I think we finished it, I'm not sure, I believe it was in '68, and she was our pastor here, Pastor Dana Davis, and she was our pastor here until the year 2011 when her health failed. We accumulated the material. A lot of the material for this church house came from Camp Robinson in Little Rock. We got the timber and drawed the nails, and it supplied the floor joists, the rafters, and just a whole lot of the material came for that. And even the windows, they're old sort of, but they came from Camp Robinson. Added the new addition in 2009 and obtained enough to get some extra parking space along with it. When I look at the building, I see a lot of sweat and work and people that had a lot of care, and it's a lot to my life, the effort that has gone in. It's really a history of community effort, along with the burden that my mother had to build it. She loved the Lord, and she wanted very much for it to be used to help people.
I'm Marvin Sutterfield. This is Fox Assembly of God, and I'm the pastor here. 1973, Court Sutterfield, my uncle, started a church here, and he went to Little Rock to the Army surplus down there to buy a large tent to hold his first services in. He got down there, they didn't have any, and so he bought a tarp. They sold him a tarp for $17, and he got back up here and got to unfolding the tarp, and it was a big tent that he originally wanted anyway. And Coy says that's one of the first miracles that happened after they started the church here, of many miracles. And their first service was Easter of 1973. And we built the old part of the church here and remodeled it a time or two and added on to the back of it. And a couple of years ago, we built a fellowship hall back here. And our congregation is, over the years, I'd say steady to growing a little bit. We got a lot of young people, young families, and this is a very good, supportive community of all the churches around here, and all cooperative and good people. And if you don't enjoy this community, you couldn't enjoy any community, is my feeling about it. God has blessed us tremendously over the years and continues to do that. We're able to do the things we do, and basically the congregation pays. We have no debt, and we're able to help when we need to help.
My name is Philip Rodney Rushing. I'm a great-grandson of Ephraim Owen Rushing, one of the charter members of Antioch General Baptist Church.
The first church wasn't right here, was it?
No, it was in the cemetery. 1888's first records in the Post Oak Grove Association of General Baptists list Antioch as a charter member. And then first actual minutes of meeting of Antioch General Baptist Church was made in 1888. An early log building burned in 1912. At that time, they built another building there, and it stayed there until about 1923 in the cemetery. Eventually, in 1923, a new church was built on this site here, donated by Joe Rushing, and they built a school separate, some half-mile from here at that time. School and church were no longer together.
I remember some talking about in the early days there were two different denominations holding church in the same building and worshiping together.
Right, that's right. Brad Holland had 4 children who played a basic role in the church organization, Josiah Holland and Monroe Holland, and then 2 sisters. Bathsheba married Ephraim O, and Mary Alice married Joe Rushing. Mary Alice sort of still, the primitive in general, or they were primitives when they came here, basically. But anyway, they went General Baptist except Mary Alice. She stayed with the primitives so they worshiped together here until the early 30s.
I also had an ancestor here, Francis Marion May. Was the first church clerk.
Right, he was the first in 1888. He signed the minutes as first church clerk. And today at Antioch Church, from these 3 families and the Hinesleys added in pretty shortly, over half the members here will have run back to those 4 families: Hollands, Rushings, Mays, and
Hinesley.
Hinesley.
We had our first Vacation Bible School here in 1958, I think. And we've had a Bible school here every year, with the exception of 1 year. We lost one of the members right at the time that we were about to start Bible school, so we missed that year. But Ladies' Aid was always active, quilting and raising money for this building down here with their quilt sales. Singing was a very important part of this church. It was made up of good singers that knew music. They had singing schools periodically.
The old building you see down in the background there was built in 1958. We used it up until about 5 years ago when we constructed this new part here. And then presently in that area back there, we're building a Family Life Center.
My name's Harold Hicks, and I'm a member of out here at Zion Missionary Baptist Church, which in the beginning was started in the 1880s, and it was started by Grandma Kendall, who got together with a bunch of folks and started the church in her house. They gathered in her house, and that's where they had services for many years. They decided that they needed to build their own building, so one of the Broyles, my grandpa, I call him Blind Jim Broyles, donated a spot of land to grow cotton, so they could grow the cotton on this land and use it to help support and build another church, which was built in the 1930s, around up at Fox, just south of Fox there, where they had a building, and after a while, I don't know exactly what year it burned down, but it burned down. And after they'd burned down, Brother Wash Branscombe, who owns the land right up the street here, and he had all this land. It used to be an apple orchard, and he donated this land for this church to be built on. So this church was started back in like 1937 when we started first attending this church. Some of the people that attended in this area is a woman named Uta Dodd. We all know her. She's 95 years old. She was one of the wonderful people at the beginning of this church that helped keep it on the ground, but also her daughter was Reba Jo Ross, and she's always been a good member of this church and has always donated lots of time and effort, especially for Bible school. Then we had Una Berry. Una Berry was a wonderful inspiration. She helped teach Sunday school, also get the Bible school put together and donated. We had a lot of young children back then, and my grandmother, Bertha Barnes, was a member of this church, and she's had a lot of helping in setting up a missionary support in the Philippines. So we have a missionary that we support in the Philippines that teaches the basic missionary Baptist churches standards and operating, and those people we help them support themselves overseas, because over there's a lot less chance of people being able to have freedom of religion and things like that. So we support that, and as through monies, once we give one of our offerings once a month to the Philippine missionary offering. Our present preacher is Brother Kenny Kendrick, and he's a wonderful preacher, and we really do enjoy him. We're somewhat of a younger church now. Most of our older people have passed on, are too old to come to church, and we have a lot of young people coming to church. Mostly Debbie Hollins and all of her grandchildren. Castleberry, Marvin, we call him Travis Castleberry, or M.T. Castleberry. He has been a big supporter of this church. He's now deacon of our church. He's also one of our adult Sunday school teacher. He's just a wonderful, all-around good Christian man. And we're one of the lucky churches. We've got a lot of young people, and we're trying to groom them to carry on the tradition of this church at this time. And that's one of our biggest programs, is try to help them know and understand this is an important part of their life, and they're learning about Jesus Christ.